Hey everyone, welcome to the first video where I, Jordan Sullivan, head dietitian and owner of TFD, will be reviewing popular weight cut videos. So the first video we'll be recording in the series is that of Darren Till before his fight with Wonderboy. Now this was when Darren Till was still a welterweight. I think this was back in 2018. So I guess before we get started and before we go through the video and watch it together and I make commentary on it, I just want to say that this is by no means a personal attack at Darren or his team or whatever. This is just purely a learning and educational experience. And I'm going to call a spade for a spade. I'm going to talk about the positives. I'm going to talk about the negatives. This is by no means an attack on Darren. I'm a huge Darren Till fan. Even when he fought our boy Robbie Whittaker on Fight Island a few weeks ago, obviously Rob's a fellow Aussie, so I was backing Rob. But I wouldn't have been too mad if Darren did come away with that one. So, before we get started, just very clear, this is not a personal attack, purely educational. But let's get straight into it now. And before, I guess I should also say, guys, please do not take this on for medical advice. Like, if you are an athlete to do this, or if you're someone that does this with athletes, please contact, Team TFD, contact other teams that have the appropriate training, the right levels of qualifications. And if you have questions or further questions about this, go and speak to them and see how these principles that I'm going to talk about apply for your individual self. Okay, now all that's out of the way, let's get to it and let's start this video. 6 p.m. Friday, 25th of May. Darren starts cutting weight with 5 kilograms left to cut. Alright, 6 p.m. So if this was in Liverpool, that means I'm going to make a guess that they competed on the Sunday morning and they would have been weighing in by the standard UFC weigh-in protocol, which is from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. the day before. Sometimes they do it 2 days before, but I'm pretty sure this would be on the Saturday. So this would be, if this is 5 p.m, then it would be, 15 hours before he has to go and weigh in on the official scale. So we've got 15 hours of weight cutting, and he said 5 kilos to go. So this is when he was still at welterweight. So welterweights have to weigh in at 77.5 kgs. He's got 5 kilos to go. So let's just do some quick maths and figure out how much of his percent of his body weight he needs to cut. So he's got to cut about 6% of his body weight. 6%, that's not an ideal number, especially by our protocols at TFD, especially for this phase of the weight cutting process. This is the part of the strategy we call the water cut. And for us, and it's pretty unanimous across researchers, academics, other practitioners, and a lot of physicians around the world, that you never really want to be doing more than 4 to 5% water cutting, which is sweating in the bath, sauna, through exercise in this final part of the weight cut. So the reason we say 4 to 5%, it's all to do with movement of fluid through the different fluid compartments in your body, but more importantly, how you get that fluid back in, and if you can even get that fluid back in the 24 to 36 hours post weigh-in when you're trying to recover. If you guys are a little confused by that, I actually have an Instagram post I'll throw up, and I'll put the link in that if you want to read a bit more. There's actually 2 really good episodes on my podcast where I discuss that whole concept as well with Dr. Oliver Barley and Dr. Lewis James, which I'll put the link to as well in the description if you want to learn a bit more about that. But that's super interesting. But essentially 6%, although it's outside of those standards, I've definitely heard of and seen people do up to 10% of water in this period, which is obviously more than double what we recommend. So although 6%, outside the recommendations, it's not super ludicrous, but the caveat to that is 6% can be really not that big of an issue, or it can be a big issue depending on what you did on the days leading into that point in the fight week with your other acute weight loss strategies, and what you did in the fight camp leading up to that. So if Darren's hydrated, he's done a good water load process where, he's obviously cutting the night before, which is pretty common when you've got a decent amount of weight to do and you want to give the body a bit of a rest and give the athlete a rest before doing the whole process. You're cutting fluid not that long ago before starting this process, so the body has a lot of fluid in there to begin with when you start this process. And if you've consumed enough energy through the week, I would assume Darren would be cutting carbohydrates and reducing glycogen to lose that weight. But has he had enough energy through his protein and his fat to ensure that he's physically got enough energy going in there? Has he taken out fiber and removed all of that as well? Has he played around with his salt and reduced his salt so his body's going to be more likely to give up this water? So all of those things, I don't know. I don't know what he did, but I'm sure we'll find out pretty quick by whatever state he's in, whether he did this right or not. All right, so he's starting on the treadmill. Okay, so he's pretty layered up. Like, he's got a lot of layers on there. He's got the sweatsuit under. He's putting on a jacket on top of the sweatsuit. He looks like he's struggling. That's not good signs this early on. Yeah, so I guess this is a good point to make as well, and it's this argument against doing this water cutting or this rapid dehydration phase either actively or passively. Now, actively is what Darren's doing right now, is when he's on the treadmill. He's doing it by exercise. That could be on the treadmill, on the bike. It could be hitting pads, could be doing whatever. Passively is just, there's no exercise involved when you're sitting in a hot bath, where you're sitting in a sauna, and it's the thermal exposure of your surroundings, the environment that you're in, that's causing you to sweat. So both processes cause an increase in core body temperature. And regardless of what the exposure is, when your core body temperature goes up, your body's way of dissipating heat is through sweating. So by trying to bring your core body temperature down, you sweat. By doing that, it cools your body down and brings down your core body temperature. So there's an argument that you can have that say active, doing this actively may be a bit better for the athlete. And the argument for that all has to do with preserving the fluid within the blood, so the plasma volume and the fluid volume of the blood. So when you're doing this, your exercise, yes, you're sweating, but you're also metabolizing, breaking down carbohydrates and fat for energy. And a byproduct of those metabolic reactions is water, H2O, and that's going to come and spill into the blood, and it's going to help preserve that fluid volume. I like that argument when you're doing small amounts of weight, 1 to 2%, before a jiu-jitsu comp or something. I'll often get guys just, hey, put on your gi or bring a thicker gi and just do your warm-up in your gi, and you'll lose that weight. When it's this much weight, not so much. I'm really not a fan of it. The other reason why they might be doing this is if it was cold outside. I'm not sure what time of year this was, but in England, I know it can get pretty cold. If Darren was coming in and it's a winter's night or whatever, and he's quite cold and his core body temperature's down lower, before, say, you put him in the sauna, instead of spending 15 minutes in the sauna getting that core body temperature back up to then go above and start sweating, you say, hey, put on a layer or two and let's have a quick little warm up and just get that core body temperature back up, just something light, maybe walk on the treadmill, do something on the bike, and then we'll go into the sauna and we'll start this process. But to be honest, he looks pretty stuffed now, and I don't know. I don't know what he did before leading up. I don't know what the strategy is here, but probably wouldn't be advising to do this actively. He looks like he's struggling. Oh, Mike Grundy. Man, Mike Grundy's a beast, eh? I suppose they train out of the same gym, don't they? Yeah. Man, he looks like he's struggling already. Alright, he's down on the floor. Yeah, I'm going to assume that they probably didn't have the best fight week strategy coming into this. Because really, if you're doing this the night before, and then you've still got to do the morning, most guys, if you nail that, fight camp and then the fight week strategy, the night before isn't, it's not that it's not hard, but it's not a terrible experience for the fighter, especially if you do it right. Whereas right now, he does not look like he's having a good time. He's laying out, sprawled on the bed. But hey, I think that's a good point to make as well. Notice how he's got everyone around him. That's a big thing, and I'm a big advocate of, is never ever do this by yourself, for one, and to never do this without anyone that isn't appropriately trained or knows how to get someone appropriately trained to you fast. So I'll give that to Darren and his team. He's got a lot of support around him. a lot of people to be around. If anything does go wrong, hey, call such and such and get the ambos in or do whatever. So I'll give him that. Okay, Darren ran for 50 minutes with multiple layers of clothing and a sweatsuit, I'm sure. Then proceeded to do 5 rounds of pad work to keep sweat flowing. Again, pad work, you can do it, you can absolutely do it. It's got to be nice and light, Tappy. You don't want to be bringing that heart rate up. You don't want to be bringing your heart rate up when you're depleting fluid out of that blood. Your body really wants to protect the fluid in your blood, because obviously your blood going around has to deliver nutrients and oxygen to your body, and you really don't want to be raising that heart rate up, because your blood pressure is just a function of your heart rate times your stroke volume. Your stroke volume is just the amount of fluid that gets pumped out of your ventricle. When you're sweating and you're doing this, you're decreasing your stroke volume because you're losing fluid out of your blood. And then in order to maintain your blood pressure, what your body does is increase your heart rate. And for these guys, if they've glycogen depleted for days leading in, if that heart rate gets too high, your body's going to want to use glycogen as an energy source. But it's joke's on you. You don't have any glycogen. We spent 3, 5, 7, 10 days or whatever it was depleting that glycogen. It gets real mentally tough, really tough on the body for the athlete. But who knows, maybe they just keep it light and they just tappy and the heart rate doesn't get up. See, he looks so fatigued already. He can't even strap his own gloves on. And I'm not a fan of them jumping up that fast, especially during this whole phase. But hey, that looks pretty light. That looks pretty light to me. That looks pretty good. Just moving around, nothing too serious. Yeah, that's not too bad. If it's just tapping and walking around, I'm not really sure what this is a part of. Are they maybe they're getting him warmed up for this one? Oh. No. Now he's starting to drop bombs. And he's starting to really go ham on these pads. That is absolutely what you do not want to be doing. Again, you don't want to be dipping into that energy source of energy that you don't have. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of this. No, I'm not a fan of this at all. No, you should not. Look at him, he looks so fatigued. This is his body is trying to put energy from where he doesn't have it. I wouldn't be surprised if he just collapses and falls over. There you go, straight on the ground. So fatigued. His body probably wants to. His blood pressure's probably getting lower. Darren then lay under blankets and towels for 20 minutes. This is super common in weight cutting, and especially in this water cutting. This is, you can call it the burrito, the towels, the wraps, whatever. It's essentially you do whatever thermal exposure to raise that core body temperature up. You put the athlete then in these towels and wraps so that their core body temperature, it's obviously going to drop as they leave that thermal exposure, and it's going to come back down through the process of sweating. What you're doing in the burrito is you're kind of slowing that process down by giving them a further thermal exposure in that wrap. I actually had an athlete a few weeks ago. I actually had an athlete that we did this with, and I'm not too sure if it's ever been studied or anyone's really put anything out about this, but we use a lot of thermometers. We check the temperature of the room, we check the temperature of the bath, we check the temperature of everything. And we actually put one of the probes into the burrito to see how hot it got. And it got up to about 39 to 40 degrees, which is pretty hot. And it's so you really want to monitor that. You really want to monitor how the athlete's sweating and be very wary of signs of, heat exhaustion and heat stroke and things like that, because that environment in there is still quite warm. Again, a lot of people supporting him, a lot of people around him. Oh, we've got I'm listening to this with the sound off, but I'm going to put the sound on so I can listen to what Mike Grundy's saying.
It's going good, really good. Till's doing good.
It's going good, really good. Till's doing really good.
To sauna. And just depends how warm the sauna is, how much he goes in at night.
That's something that's super common as well, that you'll see. Obviously Till is not doing good and really good. He's obviously struggling a lot in this, but that's something that you just kind of do, especially at this level at the UFC. I've never really been in the situation where I've really freaked out that an athlete's going to be missing weight, but I've definitely been in the spot where some things have gone on and that were kind of outside of our control, that affected the process, and we came in a bit heavier and I was a bit more aware and we had to change strategy. But if a camera came up to me or anyone from the media and said, hey, like, how's such and such's weight cut going, you'd never be like, oh yeah, like, of course, like, they broke up with such and such, and then this happened and that happened, and now he's like way heavier than what I'd like him to be, and like we're kind of stressed out. You'd never say that. It's like, oh yeah, it's good. So I guess that's just like what these guys are used to. Like, he's obviously not in the best place, but Mike's not going to tell you that. All right, so what's the plan here? All right, so they look like, again, man, he doesn't look too good, does he? Oh, no, don't pull him up. Oh, they pulled him up. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. Nah, you never want to pull people, go from here to here. Like, that's just a recipe for what we call orthostatic hypertension. And it's a drop in blood pressure. And that's when you see when people are doing this and they stand up too fast and then they faint. Essentially, it's because you've lost so much fluid out of your blood that your blood pressure's gone down. And that when you're on this position down here, your blood is pumping here, but then you come up and all the fluid drains down into your extremities. Your body normally does to regulate that blood pressure is you have receptors in your head and neck. And what they'll do is that they'll increase your heart rate to maintain that blood pressure. You'll notice this if you ever go to the bathroom and you start urinating and your heart rate goes up. It's the same concept. So you going from here, standing up, if there's a drop in blood pressure, there's a very good chance that you'll come back down. And if you're fluid depleting and you're losing fluid out of that blood, then yeah, that's a really, really good chance of that happening. So what we do is that we get the guys down and we slowly go through the process of standing back up. So you start from on the ground, you go into like a turtle position, and then you slowly come up to like a yoga stand where you're slowly coming up, and you always have like one or two if you can, if not more people around you. Because if you do pass out and you fainting isn't necessarily the worst thing. It's probably a pretty good sign that you've pushed this too hard and you've probably stuffed up and you'd want to consider not doing this anymore, and stopping the process. But what it is that if they faint and they hit their head, we always talk about, okay, taking head shots after extreme weight cuts. This point right now is when the athlete is at their most dehydrated. And so if they fall and hit their head, they're going to hit their head in their most dehydrated state. And that's really worrying. So fainting itself, yeah, it's like, okay, that's a warning sign. And depending how far along, it might just be purely because you jumped up too fast, or you've just volume depleted far too much, and okay, you stuffed up. Call the process, try better next time. But it's always, you want to be mindful of them coming back down and catching them and never let them hit their head. Sauna suit in the sauna, I'm not a fan of. Like, saunas are hot enough as it is. Like, you don't need to get that too hot. That sauna's probably 60, 65 degrees. Like, you only need to get your body temperature slightly above your core body. Now, like John Connor does like a lot of good studies, and he's done 2 good studies in the bath showing this, that you don't need it to be that hot. Like, yes, maybe you'll increase your sweat rate, but you can definitely still sweat with, say, the bath only or the sauna just being a bit hotter than your core body temp. All right, so the first weight checks. So weight checks are always, they're a really important part of all of this, because from my perspective, I'm getting an assessment and a read on what their sweat rate is going on. What would be pretty tough for these guys right now, and I'm not sure if they're just only filming this one weight check, but they've used so many different mediums to make this weight. And what you should be doing is, okay, if we're going to say walk on the treadmill, walk on the treadmill, notice how long it takes him to get sweating. And like, that's obviously a gauge of how long it's taking him, his core body temp, to get up to a point where he can sweat. And then, okay, do that, tally him off, weigh him. Okay, how much is he losing overall during that process? Okay, we're going to hit pads. Okay, put him up, whatever. Take note of how long it's taking him to sweat. Okay, hit pads for 20 minutes. How much weight did he lose during that? If you're going to go in the sauna, okay, dry him off, whatever, wrap him up, go in the sauna, take note of how long it takes him to start sweating. And then how much does he lose once he's done that? So you can start gauging, okay, well, we need to lose this much weight. We know we're losing X amount of mils or X amount of liters of fluid per whatever amount of time. So we need to do this, this, and this. And okay, we need to space it out like this because he obviously needs rest in between. And so it allows you to be a lot more methodical with this. I think it'd be tough with these guys because they've kind of just grouped it all together and they're throwing on like they won't know where he lost most of that weight. Like, was it in the sauna? Was it here? Was it there? So I wouldn't recommend just doing it all and then checking weight randomly. After 45 minutes in the sauna, Darren weighs himself. At this stage, he had lost 2.5 kilos, making his weight cut 50% complete. He went back into the sauna for 10 minutes before receiving an emergency call. What does that mean? Oh, this is, there was a big controversy about this, is that this whole process was interrupted because Darren's girlfriend had something going on, which is, yeah, that's not ideal. Like, you really want to plan, enough time for this whole thing. Like, that's super unfortunate. If that is the case, I'm not sure if that's true or not. That's what I've been told. But, yeah, that's super unfortunate because, to make this have the least risk, it's got to be very methodical and calculated, and you don't really add in for these things. You don't account for when these things happen. So that's really unfortunate. If that did happen, then that may have thrown off this whole process. In saying that, he didn't really look great starting this process. So it's like, maybe that's a blessing in disguise. Like, if he continued this all through the night, like, geez, who knows what could have happened. Okay, despite not sleeping at all, Darren asked us to meet him at the gym at 5 a.m. to continue cutting weight. Oh, Jesus. So 5 a.m. So this is 4 hours before the official UFC weigh-ins. Gee, he doesn't look too good. So he's rugged up again. So what's he doing? He's walking. So again, that active. And this is, what, like nearly 12 hours since they started this process, and he's still dehydrated. Like, I would not be advising to do this actively at all. Like, if he's... No, that's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. Okay, not long after starting, Darren had to stop as he couldn't see, likely due to dehydration. Yeah, okay. That's not really surprising, right? Like, he's so dehydrated and so fluid volume depleted. You know, where if you've ever fainted and you lose your vision beforehand, it's quite possibly because of that. Or even worse, it could just be lack of perfusion. Again, like, I'll give it to him, like, this is really not good. He should not be doing this, period. But, like, at least he's got people around him. And I would hope someone has the sense to say, hey, like, let's call this. This is ridiculous. Like, just go in, call the UFC, tell them, like, we're done. I want to run. I don't think you can run after that. You can't see, can you? Yeah, like, you definitely should not be running. They definitely should not be running. You should be lying there. There should be an ambulance and a paramedic on the way. You should have this guy, like, you should be monitoring him. You should have him in a safety position. That guy should be doing nothing but just collecting himself, staying there, and you should be monitoring him, not letting him run. Again, like, I'll give it to them, like, they've got a lot of people there and a lot of support, so you just want to hope that at least one of them, you know, has the sense to say, hey, like, come on, this is ridiculous. He just looks like, I think, yeah, it's just, I don't know, again, I don't know what they did in the fight camp, if they did in the fight week. I would assume that they've just stuffed up their acute weight loss strategies, like their fight week strategies in the days leading up, and obviously whatever happened last night isn't helping this cause. On the way back to the sauna, Darren's health got worse. Out of respect for Darren, no more filming was done that morning. Yeah, like, fair enough. Darren gave it 100% in an attempt to make weight. He even went for chronic hydrotherapy in his extra hour granted by the UFC. This is why he was half a pound heavier when he weighed in the second time that morning. Jesus Christ. So what chronic hydrotherapy is like, you go in there and it's like an enema, so they essentially shoot fluid up your butt in the hope that you flush back out and you can flush things out from the colon, like if you're backed up or whatever, and you can kind of clean it out. So obviously though, because he gained weight, he was heavier, he was half a pound heavier when he came back. So what they've done is they've put the fluid up, but because his body's so dehydrated, it's just gone and just sucked it all in. And yeah, Jesus, like, whose idea, like, what? Like, whose idea was that? But there are no excuses. Everyone from Darren's team sends apologies to Wonderboy and his team. Now, this is like one of the worst things about weight cutting, is that this guy just, like, put his life, literally on the line and did all of these things that were so high risk to his health. Like he went blind, he passed out, whatever, he shoved an enema up his bum. He like did all these things, yet they're like, oh, I'm sorry, like we tried really hard. It's like, that's one of the really common narratives in this sport though, is that when guys do this and they literally put their lives at risk and put their lives on the line and do who knows what damage to their body in the short and long term, is that they're very apologetic, and it's not so much a conversation of like, how can we fix this and what happened and what went wrong and are you okay, can we do this? It's more, oh, I'm sorry to the team, we really tried hard, like we really ran as hard as we could on the in our sweatsuit on the treadmill, we sat in that bath for as long, and we went back, and a lot of people, like people who miss weight and then they come and they've got that extra grace period of the hour. It's not uncommon to see like promoters or other people just be like, okay, just get back in the sauna, go do that. And it's like, well, no, like let's not do that. Let's do a health assessment and see where they're at right now. And obviously at the higher levels of the sport, when you lose 20% of your purse, it's, I can understand why people want to go do that. But like this whole issue, that Darren went through, that so many fighters go through, isn't so much that started at 6 p.m. the night before. Didn't even start that fight week, although I'm sure that there were probably things they could have done better in that fight week. It started when they started the camp. It started even before that. It started with the assessments. It started when you do your body composition assessment. You go, is this an appropriate weight class for you? How much fat do you have to lose during this? Okay, like let's make estimates on how much skeletal muscle you have, and if we do these strategies, okay, how much weight can we potentially lose through glycogen reduction? How much potential weight can we lose through water and sodium manipulation? How much weight can we lose from removing fiber? And do you have a high fiber diet at the moment? And then it's like, well, what can you do during the fight camp to build up to that fight week, so that when you use these fight week strategies, that when you get to this point, you're not going to be doing 6%, you're only going to be doing 4% water, and you've got a strategy, and you might be heat acclimated, and you're used to the bath, and you've been in the sauna every week leading up to that point, and not dehydrating and being very hydrated and having a good water load, so when you start that final water cut, you're not in a really dehydrated space already, or a really dehydrated state. Your body has the fluid to remove, and we're going to be confident that you can get it back in. So yeah, I feel for Darren that obviously, and there's obviously all these other things that went on during this, but yeah, I feel, and this is not uncommon though. Like you see this all the time, and especially at the highest levels, especially when you get to UFC 1, Bellator, even all of that, those guys still go through this, and it's not an issue that just happens in that fight week. It's an issue that happened way back when. Like you should be investigating this stuff on your off season. You should be playing around with your nutrition. You should be trialing these individual fight week strategies to see how your body responds to them. So when you get to that fight week, okay, this is what you do. I know that if we do this, and that, we're going to lose this, and this much amount of weight. So yeah, I feel for Darren, but it's probably poor planning. And hey, I think this was over 2 years ago. So it's like, I'm sure, and he's gone up a weight class. So I'm sure that these teams adjusted to this, and yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame, and it's sad to see someone go through that, because I would put my bottom dollar that it's just bad planning and whatever else. But hey, if anyone in Darren's team and whatnot are watching this and they want to comment and we want to have an educated discussion about this, I'd be more than happy to. It helps me learn, helps you guys learn, helps everyone who's watching this learn. So I'd be more than open to that. And if anyone else watching at home, if there's anything that I said during this and you want further clarification on, there's other points that I made that you say, hey, like, can you explain this a bit further, or you have alternative views or methods that you use with guys, feel free. Let's have an open and honest discussion, an educated discussion, please. And let's hope that we can make this better for the guys doing it. So, for yourself and your athletes or whoever is going through this process doesn't have to do that. And that all starts with education. And it starts by taking your nutrition serious way back here, not just here before you do all this stuff. So, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that first video. That was really fun for me. That was really cool to see. Like I've seen that video maybe once in a presentation before. I've never really sat down and gone through it though, so it's super interesting. So yeah, if there's any other videos you guys want me to review, just make a comment down here, and then I'll have a read, and then we can see what we can do. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys got something out of that, and any questions, comments, or anything, feel free to ask. But until next time, guys, I'll see you then.